So this week we have Halley Sutton with us again. I'm so excited. We always have so much fun. And she is puppy sitting a very, 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 very cute golden retriever. So this might be another episode with a little animal co-host, but we
For
can
sure.
deal with that. So
For
welcome
sure.
back.
Thank you. It's so good to be back. And sorry that I may or may not in the background be like, trying to make sure the puppy's not eating my house. But I'm so excited to be here with you.
Me too. And you had a really fun idea of something for us to talk about because of a class that you've been taking. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm hoping that I can come back and maybe we can have more conversations about it too once I finish the class and I can show you all my geeky highlights. Cause I'm the daughter of a teacher. So taking classes is my favorite thing ever. If I could send in my notes and get a gold star on them, I absolutely would. But these internet class people are not looking for that from me. So I have been.
I was a teacher's pet, not a teacher's daughter, right. So I feel you.
Right, and they're probably like, "No, ma'am, you've paid your $49. We're not here to And I'm like, "But I would just like a little gold star."
Look what I did.
Right, it would make me feel better. I have been taking an Atlas Obscura class on the history of art forgery and art crime. And art crime is something that I have been weirdly interested in for the last couple of years. I also think it helps that there's been kind of an explosion in art crime documentaries recently. There were a couple of different ones that have been out on Netflix that have gotten a lot of traction. But I was just saying to Kate back before we were recording that I think there's something about art crime that really is a way that you can access true crime without some of the ethical conundrums, because it's often less violent, which is not to say that there aren't victims, particularly, when museums get robbed, but there's a way that it feels less, at least to me, less icky to be kind of learning about this type of true crime, because the victims are often very wealthy people, or it's not usually as violent a crime. And so I don't know. So I've been really, really digging this class and really digging kind of when I step back and look at the true crime that I've been consuming for the last couple of years, a lot of it centers around art crime in different ways. And so I was just thought we could have an interesting conversation around that, whether it's books or podcasts or documentaries or what have you.
Yeah, I similarly, and I think I've talked about it on here, but a very long time ago, I don't really get into true crime. Mm-hmm. When it's a murder case normally or stuff like that. It's not that I never care if it's in the news or something, but it's not something I do get into. And I have always felt reading fiction just feels so much different than watching murders and
totally
being entertained by a real life murder and all of everything you were saying. It does get conflicting. Even I got on years ago, I got on a kick with the royal family, and
oh yes, we got to talk Kate Middleton
stuff, right?
Yes.
All the Princess Diana stuff was it's so fascinating, but then you're these are people's lives. That part still blows my mind. So it is more accessible, and you're making me wonder about, because I love cons and fiction as well. Such a sucker for that as a plot line. And I wonder if it is sometimes because it's not as dark and heavy. It's someone might be getting away with tricking people, but it's not you're getting body horror in those books.
No, for sure. No. And I think that there's a way in which art crime also is in books and media I've consumed. There's something that's very psychological about it, because it's such a strange crime. There's kind of two different avenues. There's forgeries, and then there's stealing paintings out of personal collections or museums. And the thing, so forgeries are the more lucrative, because essentially so one of the best documentaries that I've seen recently about art crime is called Made You Look, and I think it's on Netflix. Okay. And it's about this gallery in New York that was getting all of these collections of like crazy, like, oh, look at this Rothko that nobody's seen, look at this Jackson Pollock that nobody's seen, and they were reselling them at these high rates. They believed that they had like somebody coming to them where it was like, oh, my father had this collection in Mexico that nobody's seen. And there were just enough details that it was close enough to being believable. Whoa. And the art itself was so close to like looking like a real thing. And then it comes out that they're all forgeries. And this gallery had sold something like some crazy, like I want to say like $800 million that they like had sold these for, all of these different paintings. That could be wrong. It might be, but it was still like a significant amount of money. And then funny enough, it was like Armie Hammer's father had like owned the gallery. So it ties into all these other weird true crime, but like it's basically kind of the center, the question at the center of the documentary is like, did the curator at the gallery who was buying these things, did she know they were fake? And that's where I think it can get really interestingly psychological, because you start to go like, well, what is art? That it, you know what I mean? Like if these are passing for this art, they're not the real thing, obviously, but like art is also about like how it speaks to you and how it moves you. And there's also all this pressure in the art world to like be selling these things. Did this lady knowingly participate? Did she let herself be duped because it was like a convenient, you know, I don't know. So it just, sometimes some of the questions there I find so interesting, because then it gets into like art value. And then the other route, which is people stealing stuff from museums, I think is actually like even crazier, because when you steal something like that, you can't sell it. Like you, like, so let's say you have like a Picasso and it's worth $35 million, which is like, then we're also getting into a place of like, what even is like something worth, because it's just like a value we assign to it. Which is crazy. So when you buy it, when you steal it, immediately that value like drops like 90%, because you can't sell it to anybody who will pay that price for it, because they know it's stolen. And so like the most you could do would be try to fence it to, you know, somebody on the black market for like $4 million, which is like still a lot of money. Let's not get that wrong. But like, oftentimes people wind up doing it because they love it. So they'll just have like a garage full of like artifacts that people discover after their death. It's just such a strange, we've got a land shark of a golden retriever under the table.
He feels passionately about art too.
He does. He's like, it's very upsetting to him, the idea of forgeries. So I don't know. So it just, to me, it raises all these interesting psychological, like it's a very particular criminal who kind of engages in this, and a very particular kind of person who's taken in by some of this. But then some of it's about the kind of secrecy and oddities of the art world that like allows things like this, or like creates the space for something like this to happen. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm fascinated by it.
It is fascinating, because I know I'm trying to remember, I don't even know what the story was, but there was some kind of story during the pandemic about the way that mega like uber wealthy people kind of I feel like it was in a tax write-off type sense.
100%.
They would just have like shipping containers of like art that wasn't even being like hung up or used or anything, but they're like, oh, it's an investment or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Art becomes this, like, for the uber wealthy, it becomes like a tax shelter, or like like a way to kind of harbor investment funds that avoid certain taxes and like avoid, I don't know. And then, I mean, that's such a crazy idea. You're going to spend like all this money on something and you're not even going to display it. Nobody's going to get to see it. To me, that seems like such a waste of the art, you know?
Yeah, I know. And then when you were talking about value, just how we even come up with like what something's worth. Cause like sometimes what it's worth is what we assume or think we could say someone would pay for it. but like sometimes that hasn't even happened and it's still worth that much. And it is so weird because like if a forgery is so good that it gives you the same feeling,
right,
why isn't it worth the same?
Right. And like, you know, I'm sure that there are much more art savvy people than me out there, and I can understand like if you think you're buying a Picasso and it's not, you know, it is a forgery, it is fraud. And at the same time, I'm with you where it's like on a fundamental level, art is about the way, or actually that's not true. I think one of the things art is about is the way it makes you feel. And then I do think there's a way in which it's been co-opted as status, right? Like those people are buying a Rothko, not just because they think the Rothko is beautiful. They're buying it because it's a Rothko. And you get to say like, I have this on my wall. And I don't know, that's such a strange thing as somebody who's like creating, you know, both of us creators of content and like art. I don't know. It would be such a bummer if somebody was like, I'm going to buy all the rights to your book and then pack it away and nobody's ever going to see it. But for me, it's the status thing that like I have it, you know?
Yeah. It's kind of when you were saying status too, is making me think of like runway, like couture looks. Like some of them are so absurd and like people are just buying it because they're like, oh, I have the new thing that like was weird on the runway.
Totally. And that in turn, that thing is like, this says something about me as a person, my value, my ability to like buy this or do this. It's so interesting.
Sutton Strack, who is on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, was like that. Like she'd be like, and this is this vintage piece, and like she's even around like fashiony women and they're all like, that is not cute. But she just gets to say like, I bought it straight off the runway or whatever, whatever that's called. I can't remember.
Right.
Maybe that is what it's called.
I think so. Yeah. Clearly I'm not in a, I'm not buying anything off the runway, so I don't know.
No. Me neither.
Yeah. But it's just, it's so interesting. I mean, there's something to that. There's something so interesting about the way that like, these things that are art pieces that are like even those kind of absurd things you see on the runway, like that's a master craftsman, right, who's sitting there and doing all of these things, and then the way it becomes consumable, I don't know. I think that there's I don't even know what my question is there about it, but I'm like there's something that doesn't like work on some level there with that to me.
Well, and when it is about like owning things for status, that just makes it more confusing a little bit. Where you're like, do you appreciate this or do you just think you should? Did you ever watch White Collar on, what was that, on USA?
I didn't.
That was the like gist of it, was that he could both detect, he basically got caught doing forgeries, and then Matthew Bomer, beautiful man that he is,
so handsome.
He's so attractive, was able to like help the, what is that, white collar crime unit, which is why it's called White Collar, because he had those skill sets. But so it's like, that's always interesting to me in stories too, the like someone who like when you have like hackers who like start working for the government to like protect against hackers.
Totally.
So like then there's like that whole level of like, also the person who can tell a forgery is someone who can forge. For
sure. And I think I love that. Like that's one of my favorite things in fiction, or honestly in documentaries. So I guess I'll be where it's somebody who has the skill set that's so like different from like what you and I are doing in our everyday life, and you get to kind of like live in that for a little bit, you know, and see the way that they apply it. That's like one of the great experiences of something like that, I think.
It is. Are you like really into like, when I say art, I know it means all kinds of things, but are you into like paintings and that type of artist?
You know, for a long time I wasn't, and I don't have like a huge encyclopedia knowledge of art. Like when I was at the residency in France in February, there were so many visual artists there, and they're kind of working on like a lexicon that like I don't even I'm not fluent in, and I don't really always understand where I'm just like, I like it. I like the way it makes me feel, you know, like not this is in the tradition of so-and-so or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I struggled to click with like I would always love going to like natural history museums. I love history. I love the like way that feels kind of immediately applicable, and then didn't go to art museums for a really long time until I was just like maybe mid-20s, and then went to MoMA in San Francisco and saw a Kara Walker exhibition and was like, oh, art is just about the way it makes you feel. And it was like it was like a light bulb, and then I was like, oh, like this is fascinating, you know. And so since then it's been a bigger part of my life for sure. And like I said, there's something I'm like weirdly obsessed with the crime around art. Like one of my favorite podcasts of the last couple of years was what was it called? I don't remember what it was called, but it was about the death of artist Ana Mendieta. And she was, in my opinion, possibly murdered by her husband. And I would probably give a stronger statement if that didn't feel like potentially libelous, but like slanderous. Yeah, allegedly. And it kind of unpacks like a lot of the not just the crime, but like the art world and the way that like we struggle to. And I think we see this, and I think you and I have talked about this, but like when bad people make great art, like her husband, who may or may not have murdered her, is like himself a very famous artist whose art has like revolutionized certain things in the art world. And the woman who was hosting the podcast, her kind of point, she was both unfolding it as like a true crime podcast, but it was also like I think it was called Death of an Artist, actually. It was also kind of like looking at like, why do we not talk about this? Like, why is it that like we see his work and there isn't an asterisk about her life or like her death, you know, that like he was certainly involved in, if not the architect of, but like, and it's that sort of thing that we've talked about before of like, what about a director who's done something horrible, but has made films that are really meaningful? Like, how do you kind of hold both of those things? Does one outweigh the other, or can we find a way to talk about them together? And I don't have an answer. If I did, I would probably be writing columns for the New Yorker, but like, I think it's a question we're all having to reckon with, right? It's like people we like and love are, you know, doing bad things.
There's a lot that's come out like that. Like this Nickelodeon stuff is very like it's very terrible. I guess that's the main word that I can come up with. But it's like it's also these shows that so many people have nostalgia about. And you're like, it's just so conflicting.
I'm sorry. He's gotten something else. Hold on. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I totally get it. So
I'm sorry. Yes. I love dogs. But I don't have any. And so I thought my house was dog proofed, but evidently I had left like a little
with puppies especially.
Yeah. So sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
We were talking about Nickelodeon and the like quiet on set. Yes.
Such a title. Isn't that title just like whoever thought of that had to be like, I am God today. Like
totally.
It's such a good title.
Totally.
I mean, it's terrible what happened, but the title is fantastic.
It really is. It really is. I haven't watched it yet. Have you watched it?
I haven't watched it. I've just been hearing about it and seeing it sounds very sad, obviously.
It sounds super sad. And it also sounds like, the point you were making before, this dog ate everything in my household. Like I remember those kind of golden years shows of Nickelodeon, like all that and like different shows that they're talking about. And now they're talking about all these horrible things that were associated with it. I mean, it just is so sad to think of how much joy that brought us as kids and now where that is. Yeah.
It is. It is confusing. Like now when you think back on it, like the Amanda Bynes stuff, like it's just like, I feel so bad for her. And she was so funny from like early on.
So funny, so talented, so charismatic, and now like seems like somebody who, you know, I hope that she is in a place or winds up in a place that's good for her, and also seems like she's gone through a lot of pain and destruction based on things that sound like traumatic, you know, that she was witness to or party to. I was just reading a book, Everybody Knows by Jordan Harper. Have you read it?
Oh yeah, no, you mentioned it, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, it's destroying my life with how good it was. But it kind of, it's like a Hollywood LA noir, and they take a really interesting angle on stuff like this. And
that is cool.
Yeah, highly recommend. It's a great book. But it's such a painful subject. And like, I think we haven't quite figured out how to, I don't know. I mean, we all know it's wrong. Does that mean that we throw out everything about it? No, but I think it gets complicated when it's like, this person was a piece of this larger thing that had value, right? Like I can say like, I'm not going to listen to Michael Jackson music anymore or something like that. But when it's something like a film where it's like, this person was involved, but so were like 90 other people, I think it also gets like a little more complicated.
Yeah, like all the Epstein, like every movie he's ever been associated with, it'd be like hard to just, I mean, not everyone rewatches ones, but it would be a lot of movies to swear off of if you were going to let like just him being a part of it be the problem.
Right. Or like somebody like Bill Cosby, who has like deep meaning in like the comedy community and like diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also like did terrible things. And it's like this hard to hold.
Like like it doesn't mean that he didn't have huge impact. That's the, like, none of that gets erased technically. Like it still was like opening doors for other Black men or women as well in TV. So it doesn't go away, but it is so conflicting when you're like, but you're not the person I want to be the one who paved the way.
Totally. And right. And then it's like, sometimes I ask myself the question too of like, do we need our artistic heroes to be good people? I mean, and granted, I'm maybe not talking about like the Cosby and the Weinsteins and the Epstein side of it, like but you know, when you hear about somebody like, let's take for example, John Mulaney, whose timeline of when he seemed to get together with another woman versus the end of his marriage, which we don't know the full extent of, right? Like we just know what but it sure seems like possible there was some overlap.
Yes.
And so you're like, what do I need to like this person to enjoy their comedy? You know what I mean? I'm not going to be in a relationship with him. Do you find, or is the better move to find solidarity with the white? I don't, it's like, it's confusing.
Because I follow his ex-wife and I follow him and I watched his new special and thought it was incredibly powerful in terms of like the way he managed to talk about like his addiction and all of that experience while being funny and like sharing like stories without like shame keeping him from sharing them was like so good. Like it was one of the best comedy specials ever. But like I still see like her posts sometimes and I'm like, man, that had to hurt a lot.
Totally. And like honestly, she seems rad and I'm excited about her new book. And like not a fan of what happened in his personal life, and also like aware that I actually don't really know what happened in his personal life. You know, there's just things we're gleaning. Yeah, I know. It's a weird, like complicated conversation.
Yeah. Cause it's also like, I think cheating is horrible and I don't understand why you don't just get out of a relationship.
For sure.
Like that just doesn't make sense to me. But is it like really a crime to totally crucify someone for too? That's like, even I think you said you don't watch Vanderpump Rules, but even the Vanderpump Rules of it all with Scandival it's like there are so many things I hate about him. He really is very textbook narcissist. But is there like the very small part of me that also like understands that like he cheated and like lots of people have cheated, like so many people have cheated, and like it doesn't become national news, it's not televised, there's not footage of it, so it's like it also isn't like every now and then people act like he killed Ariana. Like every now and then people act like he murdered her, and you're like, he didn't murder her. Like, yes, it's deplorable, but like,
sure,
he didn't kill anybody.
He didn't kill anybody that we know of. And no, I'm totally with you. And then I also think on the flip side, like, it's also fair game for her to like monetize that and own it. And like, you know, she's in this like very public place. Same with John Mulaney's wife, which like allegedly her book that's coming out does not talk about him at all, which I was like, damn it. But like, I also could understand that like
Men Who've Wronged Me or whatever. What's the title?
Yeah, like, it's something like all the men who've called me crazy or something something like that. And like, I also very much understand that like maybe she doesn't only want to be known as like John Mulaney's ex-wife. So like you may not want to lean into that. But like I also, if she blasted him in that book, I would be like, fair play to you, sister. Like go have at it, you know?
I think that's always the case. There's who was I hearing? Man, I can't remember. I was hearing someone on a podcast talk about like, I understand you don't. This was also reality TV. This was about Mauricio and Kyle from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, and someone was saying like, because he has his own show now selling Beverly Hills or something like that. So now he's kind of talking about what being like around like the Hiltons and Kyle was like, and someone was like, maybe you don't need to do that. Like someone was just saying that, and it reminded me, Anne Lamott has a quote that's like something about like you can share and own and write your experiences, and if people wanted to be written about fondly, they could have behaved better. So
I love that.
I've always felt that way, where it's like, even if you could have sympathy for two sides of a situation, both people reserve the right to talk about what they went through.
Totally and like, or it also makes me think of, I mean, that quote is epic and I love that. And I'm going to start like writing that in my like cards I send to people and just be like, just a reminder, I'm a writer, treat me well, or it will show up in a book. But like, it also makes me think of Nora Ephron saying everything is copy, you know, and like writing that epic, like burn it all down book, Heartburn, about like her husband having an affair and leaving her for another woman when she was 7 months pregnant. And like, just being like, yeah, I'm going to make art out of this, just so you know.
Right. Yeah, like at least use it. That's it. We talked about Story Genius last time you were on, but she talks about how like sometimes you are going to write the most like emotional story if you're picking like a misbelief for your character or an obstacle that you've overcome, because you're going to be able to like authentically come from that point of view. So it probably fits with that quote, which, because I'm this kind of person, I am going to read it directly.
Oh, good. I'm that kind of person too.
I'm like, I can't help myself. But the direct quote is, you own everything that happened to you. Tell your stories. If people wanted you to write warmly about them, they should have behaved better. So it's very close. But that is the direct
iconic quote. I love that.
It's like, you can still, you can talk about your side of it, and I'm interested in her story too. You also never know, they could have been kind of separated at the end. That's like all the other stuff where it's like you don't know.
Totally. I am a firm believer, in theory and practice. I am probably way judgier than this, but like in theory, like no one really knows what's happening in a relationship between two people except for those two people, and sometimes not even them. But like, you know what I mean? But like, no matter what it looks like from the outside, it doesn't mean we know the inside of something. And like, that I think is like also a hard thing. And I think it's actually just hard for humans to hold that about like famous people in general. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of unnatural to know as much as we do about these people that we don't actually know. Like, I don't think like evolutionarily we have been like, that's not what humans are meant to do. We're not meant to be like, I know everything about Kyle and Mauricio's breakup, but I don't actually know who they are, you know,
at all.
So there becomes this like weird attachment to it. So I think the parasocial stuff on that level, it feels very like human. I understand why it happens. And at the same time, I think we would all do well to be like, I don't know Taylor Swift. I don't know Beyonce. I feel like this is where our conversations always end up.
That's what I was thinking about. I was like, I love that we always end up with like, no one really knows people. Like, take that as you may.
Totally. And we're like, especially Taylor Swift. None of us know her.
Taylor Swift. We all really think we know her. We don't.
Totally.
Their vacation pictures came out. I don't know if you, if you were on Instagram, you probably saw one of them.
Yeah.
And like one of them was like Taylor and Travis taking on the world. And I was like, are they taking on the world or are they just walking to the beach? Like,
right. Like, God. I'm sorry, which like entrenched systems are they upending? Systemic racism, capitalism? Like, what do you mean they're taking on the world?
Yeah, like they're in the Bahamas wearing bathing suits.
They're going on a short vacation that costs more money than most of us make in a year. Taking on the world, though.
Oh my gosh. I saw some brilliant account did a breakdown of like where they were staying. Not that I'm promoting, we need to like say where everyone stays.
Sure.
But it was like after they had already been they'd left at this point. But the place they were staying is like, I think it was a real estate account. That's why I thought it was so brilliant, because it's like that's the kind of content you should do.
Totally.
Is like $15,000 a night, and you have 3 butlers and like 2 maids. Like they were like breaking down everything, and like you're like, of course, like beachfront, like you're right. You just like walk out onto the beach, and the butlers will come on the beach with you. And I was just like, damn,
wow,
that is expensive. And I know it's not to really
expensive.
Either of them at this point, but like that is, I can't even wrap my head around it. And I'm not judging it. If I had money, I would do it too at some point. But I can't even wrap my head around it. It's a whole other life.
Totally. It's right. And that's like, I think like, so this is kind of goes back to the art crime thing. Like, I think we have all the last couple of years, like been so fascinated, and not in a positive way necessarily. And I shouldn't say us all, but like, I do feel like these kind of stories that come out about like, I think the New Yorker had a story a couple of years ago about like the lives of the super rich on yachts. And it's just this world that like none of us actually, like that's the stuff that they're actually doing is like so far beyond that. They're like, it's not even like they're in the same world as we are. You know what I mean? The things they have access to, and like, it just is so crazy.
Yeah, no, it totally is. I wonder how you even do write a book about it when like you have no clue what the actual mega rich are doing.
Well, I'm trying to, and I don't. Yeah, all I can do is research. But I don't know if I told you this. I'm sorry. I'm also a little bit allergic to this dog. I'm a disaster today, Kate. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay.
So I got asked to do some like documentary commentary on a noir film, which was like the coolest highlight of my life. And I got to do it. This was a couple weeks ago at this really fancy mansion in Los Angeles, in a really she part of town called Hancock Park. And I walked in, and it was like walking into the movie of like Chinatown. Like, and I don't even mean like the set of the movie. I mean like the movie. It's like you walk in, they've got these like alcoves where it has like trophies they've won that are lit up, and you go into the living room, except it's not the living room, it's the music salon. And there's a balcony where they would have live musicians playing on Friday nights that they would bring in. There was a secret room behind this room. There was like a massive pond in the backyard, and beyond that there was like a child's playhouse for the daughter of the house who had lupus, so she never, in the 50s, so she never grew taller than like 4'6". So everything is built on a small scale. I was just like, even that, seeing something like that is so outside of my like, that felt crazy. And that's like not even as wealthy as they go, but it was just such a I felt like I'd walked into a different world. You know what I mean? Like, it was just beyond beautiful. And like, who lives like this? I don't live like this.
It'd be so amazing.
Yeah. What would you do if like you had access to like the uber wealth?
That's a great question. So first of all, I would want to live somewhere isolated. So I don't even know exactly where that is, but like, I mean, even just the fact that I lived in like a vinyl village neighborhood where like tons of families live here, and it's like densely populated. So it's like we're going into summer and I'm starting to hear mowers all the time and kids screaming, and like kids reserve their right to scream, but
sure,
like I don't want neighbors. Like not I would want like land around wherever I lived. I don't know if I would want to live on the ocean because I haven't been to the ocean very often. So I guess I don't know if that's exactly where I'd want to live. But then like I think I would want to be, Tyler and I have actually talked about this before. Like I want to be like close to like movies or TV shows or something, in a way that like if I'm interested I could like talk to the people who wrote it or all of that.
Yeah.
But like I never want to be famous myself. Like I think it would be very cool to be like on the outskirts of some of those things or like projects that I am interested in, but I live in Indiana for now. But without like being in the spotlight, if that makes sense.
For sure. I was going to say, it sounds like you want to move to LA, and I'm here to support that.
I know. I don't not want to move to LA. How about I say? In Austin, we have so many more like friends lately in Austin. Like Austin seems really cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would want to get close to projects that are more interesting than what I do now.
I hear you. Yeah. I like that. So some sort of like isolated castle, maybe on the beach, maybe near like a cool industry of film or books or different things. Yeah. And less mowers and children. I fully support that.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, totally. I would probably, honestly, like I would probably buy a villa like in the south of France or something and be like, I go here every, 3 months or whatever. Like, and then use it as a writing retreat for other artists in my spare time. That's what I would do.
That would be so cool.
Yeah. That's the dream.
I don't even know all the places I would want to have houses. I haven't traveled much, so I would need to do some of that to figure out where to go. Yeah. I feel like I want all the food that's in Europe. Compared to here.
Totally. Such good. And like I've like food tours in Europe, you know what I mean? Like that would be the dream.
Yeah. Like if I had just enough more time in my life, but also maybe I'm not great with my hands, but all of this is headed towards like homemade pasta. Or like it's not from a box. Like that's where I was coming from with like Europe food too. Can you tell that it's like an hour away from my dinner time while we're recording?
I know. I'm pretty sure we're about to be like, all right, what do you want to eat right now? Like that's where I'm headed with this too. No, totally. So here's the plan is we just commit like a little bit of art crime. Like we either become master forgers or we like steal something and then we just like travel through Europe and eat fresh made pasta. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And then just post up somewhere and read for like 4 days straight.
All the time. Literally all the time. That sounds like perfection.
I'm curious. Like how long do you give a book before you DNF it? Like,
so if it's, I feel like I at least want to get to like 25% normally. Since I like read my Kindle, that's probably more the way that I think about it. But it's like if I have been struggling the whole time up to 25%, I will definitely just like DNF. If it's something where I can tell that like maybe a bunch of plot threads are going to come together, I might get more into the 50 or 60%. Like if I think it's going to like pick up and that it just is a slow burn, like if it's a really slow burn, it just doesn't hold my attention anymore lately.
I hear you. And there's like, I don't know, we're just inundated with content constantly, whether it's like books or TV shows or movies or Instagram or TikTok, you know what I mean? It's like something has to like grab your attention and stay with it. So I get it too.
Yeah. I did see one today that I am so excited about, and it felt like something that would be up your alley too. It comes out July 16th, and it's called Where Are You, Echo Blue by Halley Sutton.
Yes, I have seen this. Yeah, it's the I do know about this one. I follow her on Instagram, and I think it's like what was she, like a 90s teen star or something, and she goes missing?
Yes.
Like, yes, that's so up my alley.
And nobody like cares except this. Everyone's like, of course she disappeared. And there's like a journalist who gets obsessed with it and is like, no, I'm gonna figure out where she is. And I saw it on Instagram, or Bookstagram, whatever, when I was scrolling it, and it said for fans of Evelyn Hugo, and sometimes that doesn't mean there's any mystery in it, but I still always want to know. And so when I read it, I was like, this is mystery and Evelyn Hugo adjacent. And so I was so excited.
That's awesome. Yeah, it looks great. I'm super excited to read it for sure. That's up my alley.
The covers are really cool.
Yeah.
Have you been reading anything? Or just what you already talked about?
Jordan Harper. And I just started Society of Lies by Lauren Ling Brown. I have an early copy. Yeah, I got to, I met her actually at a Bookstagram event a couple months ago, and she's lovely and she's a debut. And so she sent me her books. I think gently, friendly bullied her into it. I was just like, oh my God, your book looks so great. You know who would love to read it early? Oh, me, just putting that out there. Just email it, send it to me. And she was like, all right. So I'm reading it now, and it's great. It's good. It's like dark academia. Yeah, it's great.
I'm the most excited for that one. And Steph, who's been on this podcast as well, she and I both have it on NetGalley. And so both of us are so excited about it. But like, I also have like 12 more before it chronologically, So like sometimes I would probably read a July book in June.
Yeah.
Or sorry, in August. It's August. An August book in July. But like both of us are like, are we just gonna like break out of our like regimented like read them in order because we both want to read it so much. It just sounds so
good. For sure. Yeah, it's really good. I'm really enjoying it. So I think you'll both like it a lot. Yeah. Yeah. She's great. I hope this book takes all the way off.
So maybe I'm just gonna have to read it. I don't know. We'll see.
It kicks off with a bang for sure. Like it got my attention very early. Yep.
Do you read? I don't know if we've even ever talked about it. Do you dabble in like sci-fi thrillers at all? Not.
I do.
I do. I'm really excited about When I'm Her that just came out from.
Oh yes. I don't know how to say her last name.
I'm sorry, Sarah. But I'm really excited for that one. That one sounds really good too.
It does sound really good. It sounds like an incredible premise. I think my friend Megan Collins actually said she got to read it early and loved it. So anything Megan recommends, I'm on board for.
Yeah, that one just came out this week. And I'm pretty excited for that one.
Yeah.
I randomly did not get it on NetGalley. But speaking of books, you said you had a couple that were loosely related to art crime as well.
I do, yes. So I am a huge fan of Noir at the Bar events. I don't know if I know they have them all over the country. I don't know if they have them near you, but they have a very thriving chapter in LA headed by a writer named Eric Beatner. Sorry, the dog is once again attacking the table. What's going on in your doggy brain, my friend? And when I was there at a Noir at the Bar event, I met this woman, Alex Kenna, who is an artist. She's a lawyer. She's a writer. She has a kid. I was like, you are wearing a lot of hats. And so her first book, so she has a series of books. She just announced the second one, but the first one I believe is called What Meets the Eye, and it's about like a private eye, but it all is around the art world. And so she is a really interesting writer, doing interesting stuff kind of with the art world and on a PI, and like highly recommend her stuff.
Nice.
Yeah. And then there's some good nonfiction.
Ooh, that cover for What Meets the Eye is so cool.
Right? Isn't it great?
And
I heard her read, and she was just fantastic. So, like, highly recommend. She's great. Another one that I'm thinking of is called The Art Thief, but it is nonfiction. Let me pull up. I can't remember the last name, but it's about they think he's probably the most prolific art thief in the world. And he's somebody who would go into museums and steal pieces of art, evidently shockingly easy to do. Like, truly
sounds like it.
Right? And like hundreds of art pieces. But never sold them, just kind of like collected them. And he lived in his mom's house, and he was like up in the attic and was just like, nobody come up here because it's full of treasure. And then eventually gets caught. It's a crazy, fascinating story. Yeah. And so that's a great one. It really was. So that's one. I'm going to my Goodreads so that I can double check and see the other ones. Another one that I love, I am obsessed with this author. I don't think I ever see her enough on anything. It is Barbara Borland. Do you know her? She's written, her third book came out in 2022 called The Force of Such Beauty. It is one of my favorite books of recent years. I recommend it to everybody. She just has this like way of writing. She's just so alive. Barbara Borland, The Force of Such Beauty. It's kind of a behind the scenes look at like someone who is like in a Meghan Markle position. This woman is a former Olympic athlete. She marries the crown prince of this small country. And it's like the dark side of the fairy tale, but it's so well done. But anyway, that's her most recent book, which is not art crime. My brain works in circles. Her second book, Fake Like Me, is fiction, and it is about art and this woman who's trying to basically recreate all these paintings that she's already sold, but which went up in a fire. And so they're not the originals. So she's like forging her own work, which is kind of this crazy concept. But then she's at this artist residency, and one of the artists has went missing years before. Killed herself years before at the residency, and she's trying to figure out why. And it's just like this beautiful thriller, very literary, very like just wonderful. Her prose is just like unbelievably stellar. I believe that one was actually nominated for the Edgar as well. Because it is really a fantastic book.
Yeah, it does say that. Edgar Award nominee.
Yeah. So The Art Thief is by Michael Finkel. And that I highly recommend. That's the story of the most prolific art theft. And then another one, this is sort of about art, and it's sort of a crime novel, but it's also kind of like magical realism, like a little bit speculative. And it's a novella called My Death by Lisa Tuttle. And I don't even know how to describe this one. It's short. It's like 100 pages. So if you're like looking to like get through something quickly, it's about this woman who's a writer, and her husband has died. She hasn't written anything since he's died. And then she decides that she's going to write a biography of this famous artist who has this kind of like crazy life. There's a big mystery at the center of it. And like, that's all I'll tell you, but it goes so much weirder than that in the best possible way. I don't know how Lisa Tuttle's brain works, but I'm obsessed with it. And there's a foreword of it by Amy Gentry, who's a thriller writer, crime writer that I really love. And she is actually the person who turned me on to Lisa Tuttle. She was like, you should read this book. And when Amy Gentry sends you something, it's like, I think you would like this. You just say, yes, ma'am, please give me more. Can I have another? Yeah. And so it's great. Yeah.
That's cool. It's a very trippy cover. I mean, so is the
right?
So,
yeah.
That is very cool.
It's a trippy book. Like I recommended it to my friend Olivia, and she read it and then was like, can I call you and talk to you about the ending? And I was like, yes. And so we were on the phone for like an hour trying to be like, what did you think of it? Like, it was so good.
I love those moments when you're like, I just enjoyed this and I need to find someone to talk to about it.
Totally.
Like half the reason I started this podcast, because I was like, I need to talk to people about these books.
For sure.
Yeah.
Do you what about you? Do you have other books that you're excited that are coming out or coming out soon?
I do have. So when you brought this topic up, I was like, oh, that's such a cool topic. And then I was like, wait, have I read any books with art theft in it specifically? But I ended up sending it to you. This is not totally the same, but I am excited for this book called Blood Rubies by Mayland Do Kwon. That's kind of, to keep it really short, it's about a woman named Rune who is a jewel thief. And over the course of a week, basically her life completely unravels after she thought she was doing a typical job, just getting some rubies from a Bangkok hotel room of a wealthy smuggler. But then more and more crazy stuff starts happening. It kind of feels like it's almost like a spy thriller, but in terms of like what she gets into, but about a jewel thief. So I'm very excited for that. I'm excited for that one.
That sounds great too. That sounds right up my alley. It's got like interesting, like a heist, like you said, a spy thing, almost like kind of Indiana Jonesy, like a little bit in there. Like that sounds so up my alley. I'm excited about that one too.
Yeah. It also makes me about that one.
Yeah.
No, go for it.
Okay. Sorry, another strange rambling digression, but one of my best friends here in LA works at the Natural History Museum of LA and was able to give me like her own little personal tour. They're doing a gem exposition right now. And so they have this, one of the biggest diamonds that's ever been cut in the world is there. And like this thing is like incredible. It is actually bigger, but they cut it down to make it look more, because you couldn't set it into any jewelry. And so it was originally owned by the king of Egypt, and then he was overthrown, and somehow the queen of Nepal ended up with it, and then that was overthrown. And now they it had been somebody, so the last time it had been seen, sorry, I have a dog here who's very excited about this ball. The last time it had been seen was in the 1930s. And then somebody, I want to say 10 years ago, calls the Natural History Museum and he's like, hey, my dad just passed away. He had a secret vault in Switzerland. And when we opened it, we found this priceless diamond that's been missing for 70 years. Do you guys want to display it? And so they were like, sure. Yes, absolutely. I think he had a relationship to the curator at the Natural History Museum. Okay. So he knew that he reached out to them about it. But it's just such a fascinating, it kind of again goes to our idea of I don't know anything about this guy's dad. I'm not suggesting he stole it, but it is also a unique move to have one of the premier diamonds in the world and just be like, we're going to put it in this Swiss thing and nobody's ever going to know about it. And you're kind of like, what's the story there? So that's what, when you, so that that book made me also think of that story and just what else is in a Swiss bank vault somewhere, and what's the book somebody's going to write about that?
Right. Well, coincidentally, I'm reading a book right now called The Lockbox, where the premise is an ex-military woman has switched to being a safe cracker.
Cool. Yeah.
That's kind of the fun when I said it, but it is right. I see it right there. But she's doing the same thing.
The expression on your face was that can't be it.
I guess I don't say that word out loud very often, which would make sense. But she normally does really routine, just helping people who get locked out of their own safes.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she's ambushed at a job.
Ooh.
And then her captor, I'm trying to make sure this is all kind of in the synopsis. I don't think this is spoiling anything. This happens very early on. Her captor also kidnapped her kid and is telling her you have to open this huge ass safe that they have in I don't know, some building.
Wow.
And he's like, you have this amount of time to do it, and she doesn't even know what it is on the inside that he wants. So coincidentally, I'm kind of reading something about weird things in safes.
Serendipitous. We're all kind of circling the same things.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It is. It's been pretty good. The only other books though, books that I have read that were similar, I don't know if you read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang this year.
I did. I loved that book.
Okay, and that one that one's about basically June, who is not achieving literary success, and her kind of friend Athena Liu, and I'm making sure I'm not giving anything away in the synopsis.
I know, right? Because I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So Athena dies in like a freak accident, like not expected. And June is in this circumstance where now she has access to a almost complete manuscript that Athena wrote, and Athena's been popping off. So now she has access to it, and she runs with it.
Yeah.
But it also brings up some similar questions because she does like change it. It's like she does edit it a little bit. And so then there is all of the intriguing, like, no, she doesn't deserve the credit for it.
No, for sure.
But she also is a part of how it became a final product. So
totally
unique. And there's lots of satire.
Lots of satire. Such a unique, compelling voice in that book, unlike anything I've read for a long time. And also like the way it goes in on publishing was very interesting and satisfying too.
Yeah. No, she did not hold back.
No.
In that book. It's there's like a lot of really punchy humor about publishing, which I don't completely know about it, but it was fascinating. Yeah. And then really similarly, when I was just interviewing Addison McKnight, who's a writing duo, they referenced the plot by, I don't know if this is Jean or Jean Correlitz. And I have had this on my TBR for a very long time and just ended up forgetting about it. And so she referenced it, and that it's a really similar plot, but it's basically a professor of an MFA program named Jacob. He has a student named Evan Parker who says he has a really good manuscript, and he's like, yeah, whatever. And then he reads it, and he's like, wow, that is actually really great. And then I don't know if this is the same thing. Does Evan Parker die? Yes. So he dies, and same thing, has access to someone's previous ideas. So clearly it kind of shows up in 2 books.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And that's interesting. And I wonder if that's like, I mean, to me, it seems like an interesting fantasy maybe that like all of us have had, or like an idea of like, okay, what if you could do this thing and get away with it? Like, these people are dead. You're not necessarily hurting them by doing it, although you probably are, but like, you know what I mean? And I think it gets at like some very like interesting human questions, this kind of setup. Because clearly we like, as like, there was like a Bradley Cooper movie, right, where he like discovers a manuscript or something and he takes credit for it, and then somebody finds out that it's like it's not his. So like there's something about this setup that we like keep returning to as like something interesting. I think
it is
that we're trying to work out.
Yeah, it's a fascinating idea.
It really is.
I love this topic. You had a great talk.
I know, me too. Me too. And when I finish the class, maybe I can come up with like my little like list of like, here's 10 interesting things you didn't know about art forgery. And I know I mentioned this before we started recording, but something that was interesting that came up already in this class is that the instructor offers like I think it's like 2 or 3 week certification in Italy where you can like become certified as like an art crime forensics expert or something. And so like that is now one of my new life goals, is to like go some summer and be like, yep, like let's show up and go.
Oh, that would be so cool.
Wouldn't it be cool?
To document it, and then we could talk about it the whole time.
For sure. And just be like reporting today from the art crime scene, you know?
Yes, totally. That would be so cool.